Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and I wonder how many of you have heard that the Valuation Office Agency is merging with HMRC. I'm doing this video because I wanted to know, if anything, what it means for ordinary people like us. So this is my storytelling time that I often give to you. So I read the news about the organisation responsible for valuing properties for council tax and business rates. The Valuation Office Agency is going to be merged into HM Revenue and Customs. Most of us already know HMRC as the body that deals with taxes, income tax, national insurance, VAT, the part of government that calculates what we owe and collects it. So when I heard that another agency connected to property valuation is being absorbed into that system, I automatically wondered, what does that mean for ordinary people? Hence this video. Most of us know that council tax is a local tax on domestic property, introduced under the Local Government Finance Act 1992. It is collected by local councils, not by the National Tax Authority. But the amount you pay depends on property valuations, and those valuations are produced by the Valuation Office Agency. Meanwhile, the National Tax Authority, HM Revenue and Customs, manages the UK's broader taxation system. So the structure currently looks like this. The VOA, which is the Valuation Office Agency, determines the value band of properties. Local councils issues and collects council tax bills. HMRC collects national taxes, income tax, VAT, etc. The VOA sits inside government but historically separate from HMRC, even though both relate to taxation systems. The organisation we're talking about is the Valuation Office Agency, simply called the VOA. Most people never interact with it directly, but its work affects millions of households and businesses. The VOA is responsible for determining the value of properties for council tax bands and business rates. In simple terms, it helps decide which council tax band a home sits in and how much commercial property owners pay in business rates. It doesn't collect tax itself, it simply determines the valuation that the tax is based on. That tax collection role belongs to another body, HM Revenue and Customs, usually shortened to HMRC. HMRC is the United Kingdom's central tax authority. It manages income tax, like I said, corporation tax, custom duties, and a whole range of national revenue streams. So what the government is proposing essentially is an administrative change. The valuation work done by the VOA would sit directly inside HMRC instead of existing as a separate agency. Now, when people hear the word merge, they sometimes imagine a big shift that will immediately affect their lives. But in practical terms, for most citizens, the day-to-day experience will probably look exactly the same. Your council tax will still be sent. Your council will still send your council tax bill. Your council tax band will still be based on property evaluations, and businesses will still pay business rates based on the assessed value of their premises. What changes is mainly where the work sits inside the government. There are a few reasons why governments allegedly sometimes make these kind of changes. The main one we hear about is efficiency. When two agencies work closely together, merging them can simplify systems, reduce duplication, and allow information to move more easily between departments. However, even though the stated goal is efficiency, some observers point out that centralising property data and tax administration in one place increases analytical capability. In other words, HMRC could potentially have better visibility of property ownership patterns, more integrated financial data, stronger tools to detect tax avoidance or fraud. That doesn't automatically mean more tax, but it does mean more integrated oversight. So, there is an indirect connection between valuation and taxation systems. Property has always been one of the major foundations of taxation systems. Historically, another reason is data and technology. Modern tax systems rely heavily on digital infrastructure. Bringing property valuation into the same organisation that already manages tax data may help streamline processes. And sometimes it's simply about clarity, having one central organisation responsible for related functions. And you must imagine that AI and technology has got a lot to do with this. However, when a tax authority becomes involved in additional responsibilities, some people naturally feel cautious, and that caution is understandable. Taxes affect everyone, and any structural change within the system can raise questions about transparency, oversight, and fairness. But it's important to understand what this change does not mean. It does not mean HMRC suddenly gains the power to revalue homes arbitrarily. It does not mean people will automatically see their council tax increase because of the merger. And it does not mean the government gains new taxation powers through this administrative change alone. Property valuations and tax rules are determined through legislation and policy decisions, not simply by moving departments around inside government. That said, the conversation does highlight something interesting about how government systems work. Most people only notice these institutions when something goes wrong or when they receive a bill, but behind the scenes there are layers of agencies, data systems, analysts and valuation professionals who keep the machinery of taxation operating. The Valuation Office Agency has been one of those quieter parts of the system. Many people have never heard of it until their property band is questioned or a business rate appeal takes place. So this merger is also a reminder of how interconnected these systems really are. Property values influence council tax. Property values influence business rates. Business rates influence local government revenue. And all of that feeds into the wider public finance system managed by HMRC. For most of you, the key takeaway is quite simple. This change is primarily structural and administrative. It's about how government departments are organised, not about taking more money from people tomorrow morning. That does not mean taking more down the road. Of course, it's always sensible to stay informed about how public institutions evolve. Transparency and public understanding matter, but at this stage, the merger between the Valuation Office Agency and HMRC is best understood as a bureaucratic restructuring rather than a policy shock. The systems that determine council tax bands and business rate valuations will still exist. The processes for appealing valuations will still exist, and the everyday experience for most households will likely remain unchanged. So despite the dramatic headlines, the merger doesn't change your council tax bill tomorrow morning, but it does bring property valuation and the National Tax Authority closer together inside government. That can reduce administrative duplication, but it also means that the tax system becomes more integrated. And, sometimes they say these changes are not going to happen tomorrow morning, as if we know that it's not going to happen tomorrow morning. What we worry about is the impact down the line. We know that nothing's going to happen tomorrow morning, but what does this mean for ordinary people down the line? Say in 6 months' time or a year, what does it mean for us? And I believe it's going to mean something, but I don't know what. And I don't know how, but I think it's best to watch this space, especially if you're a business owner. I think it's got more to do with trying to make sure people are taxed appropriately on their properties. And like it says, it's got better oversight. So people who have 2 or 3 properties, or who have put extensions on their properties or conservatories on their properties, maybe they'll be scrutinised a bit more. But that's all for now. Ciao.